Hello, everyone. My name is Kayla Marufo. I'm the president of LPH, and welcome to the Biola Alumni panel. We're so glad for you guys to be here, and we're so excited for our panelists. Like I said prior, my name is Kayla. I am the LPH president. We also have Kelly Gonzalez, who is our vice president, and Abigail Ducharme, who is our administrative liaison. So our Biola Alumni panel. How about Sophia? Would you first start off in introducing yourself?
Yeah, totally. What do you want me to include in my introduction?
How about when you graduated? What are you currently doing now? And something that was the highlight of your week.
Oh, okay. So my name's Sofia Franco, and I graduated from Biola spring 2018 with COMM degree, rhetorical and interpersonal emphasis. And yeah, right now I'm working as a youth worship pastor at a church. And so basically I get to disciple high schoolers for a living, and it's the best. I love my job. I love my church, and it was a journey to get here, and so I'm really thankful for this job. I actually got hired during COVID, so that is rare and definitely a God thing. So yeah, I've definitely had my fair share of like post-grad kind of job juggling and side hustling, and it's been a while. And yeah, so I'm really thankful, and I don't take for granted at all like what I get to do right now. And yeah, and the highlight of my week was probably being with my students. We had a Friendsgiving event on Friday night, and I'm just really proud of them. They're growing a lot, and it's just really special to see them just from the like beginning of the fall to now, even like over the span of 3 months, they're just blossoming into spiritually autonomous young adults, and it's very cool. So yeah.
Okay, so Landon, would you like to go next?
Sure, happy to. As Kayla said, I'm Landon. I graduated in 2020, so not that long ago. And I'm currently working with Family Life. They're a ministry of Cru, formerly Campus Crusade for Christ, based in Orlando, Florida. So it is 7:30 here, and enjoying it here very much. Highlight of my week. Oh, I'm a mobilization coordinator, which is just a fancy term for, I work in HR recruiting. And highlight of my week, as I mentioned earlier, from Seattle, big Seahawks fan. So getting to see the Seahawks beat the Cardinals was a good one. So Scott agrees.
Rebekah, would you like to go next?
Sure thing. So my name's Becca, and I graduated in 2014. And I'm currently working as a marketing and communications manager at a nonprofit in Portland. And so we partner with the Portland Police Bureau and provide emergency food and clothing to people in need. So during COVID, I have learned a lot and have grown tons. So that's kind of what I do right now. And let's see, the highlight of my week, because at least living in Oregon, we're in like a whole nother round of lockdowns. And so I had to unfortunately cancel my Thanksgiving plans. So to make things better, my husband and I started decorating for Christmas early, because it was like, well, it's been a year and it continues to be a year. So trying to find those moments of joy where we can.
Wonderful. Scott, would you like to speak next?
Yeah, thanks. So I'm Scott Alford. I graduated in 2013, before there were emphases in the communications department. That seemed like it was a lot of fun when that came through. I live from Seattle, still live in Seattle, work in Seattle. I work for a technology consulting and staffing firm called Blueprint Technologies, and I am a client development operations manager. So that essentially means that I am the hub of communication for the sales team, and manage all of our interactions with other departments in the company.
Wonderful. And is there a highlight of your week?
Oh, yes, highlight of the week. Well, I tested negative for COVID after being exposed to somebody 2 weeks ago, so hard to beat that.
Wonderful. So how our panel will go is that we have several questions that during a survey students have requested, and once after the questions are out, we will be opening up to questions from our audience. And so feel free when we ask these questions, feel free to just jump in whenever you go, or even after another panelist speaks. So feel free. And our first question is, why did you decide to graduate with the Comp Studies degree in the first place? What piqued your interest about this major?
I can go. So I actually remember the moment that I decided to be a comm major. I was undeclared for the whole first year at Biola. Everyone kind of came in with a major and a lot of people switched, but I actually came in without one. And it was really awkward because at all the SOS things, people were like, what's your name? Where are you from? What's your major? And I was just like, I don't have one. And that was my life for a year. And I kind of have always been the kind of person to just like wait and then go rather than be like, ha, ha, ha. And so I sat in on comm theories with my friend Jeffrey, and because he was a comm major and I was talking to him and just like asking him about it, he's like, you should sit in on a class. And I was like, okay. And I sat in, and I still remember like what the teaching was on. It was on dialectic theory and talking about like relational dialectics. And I just remember thinking to myself like, oh my gosh, these are things I've always noticed, but I didn't have the words to explain them. And like these people are giving me the words to explain things that I've already noticed that not a lot of other people do notice. And so kind of from there, I was like, wait, this is like psychology, except you're not studying as much of like neurology, but you're studying like how people actually interact and how the best strategies and ways to do that is. And so that's why I wanted to be a comm major. I didn't have like a career trajectory in mind when I chose the major. I chose it for the like material and the subject itself.
Yeah, I'll go next just because there's some overlap between our stories there. I also entered undeclared, not sure what I wanted to do. Took some journalism classes thinking I was going to go that route. And then someone from my church back home actually knew Dr. Malloy. And so great woman. And through that contact, I set up office hours with her and just kind of shared with her what I was passionate about. And she said, yeah, you should, she just encouraged me to do comm. And very, very glad that I did that. I loved her classes. And again, I don't know if your class was a Muehlhoff class that you sat in, but Muehlhoff was huge also in just kind of spurring on that love for communication. And even later on with Mo, I feel like every year I could pick a benchmark class as like, this is why I'm a comm major, really love it. So, and then same way, I didn't really know specifically what career path I wanted to go down. And I'm still, in all honesty, very much on that journey, but felt like comm encompassed a lot of things that I enjoyed, was passionate about, skilled at. So felt like a really good fit, and I would say that it was.
I feel like for me, remembering back when I was in high school, I remember my favorite classes were public speaking and creative writing. And my parents were like, you should really think about, hey, what kind of major would align with that? And so I realized I feel like business is super practical, so maybe I should go that route. And I knew instantly, I'm not a science person. My brain just doesn't work in that way. And I realized, what do I love and what do I think I'd be good at in the future? And so it was just, I love people, always have, and have just been always encouraged at like being able to listen to somebody and hear their story. And the way that people share stories, I think, is incredibly important. And I've always just been drawn to like advertisements that you see on TV or different books that I've read or whatever. So I came in as a communication studies major, and I'd say from like my first class, I just fell in love with it. So yeah, I am a huge proponent in encouraging people, even if they're not a communication studies major. I think everybody can benefit from taking a class or two, just learning how to engage with people on that human level.
So contrary to what has been shared, I didn't know that I wanted to do communications before I started at Biola, but I knew for certain I did not want to be undecided. Or like I wanted to not be in a scenario where I had to choose once I came in. And I didn't want to be in the position of not being able to answer that question. So probably a little bit of ego involved, but essentially I chose COMM initially because it just seemed like, you know, if I did change my mind, you can't go wrong learning about how to communicate with other people. And so if I went to business or I went to, you know, some other major, I was going to still benefit from that, whatever classes that I took. And then probably like 10 minutes into interpersonal communication with Professor Colley was when I was like, yep, this is the major for me. And I was 100% pedal to the metal until I graduated, and very happy with that decision.
I love that you guys brought up the different professors that we are also engaging in, and it's just so wonderful how much they're impacting our lives as well as how much they have impacted your lives. And oh, it's so amazing. And well, I know that I can definitely relate to you, Rebekah. When I was originally a business major before COMM, so it's pretty great to see all you guys' stories interlapping with one another. So our second question is, what brought you to your current profession? Was it unexpected or was it planned?
I would say that probably like some of you, it was around this time last year, November, December, where I saw the clock starting to tick and I'm like, oh, I need a job. And so I just kind of started putting the feelers out there and started looking into Family Life, which is a, you know, Christian ministry or organization, and kind of applied to a number of missions organizations type positions because I was like, I don't know what I want to do. And I feel like, well, I don't know, I should apply to something where, you know, God is really the focus of it, and maybe he'll lead me down this path, maybe not. And it's just, I don't have a clear direction, so let's try this out. And I did not think I was going to move. I'm originally from Seattle, like I mentioned, and then loved my time in California. Did not think I would end up in Florida, across the country. So that was a big surprise. But as I just continued to pray about it, I felt God pushing me in this direction, calling me here. And it wasn't so much a verbal calling of, Landon, you have to go here, but it overlapped a lot with what I enjoyed doing is, you know, connecting with people, having conversations and getting to hear about them, connect with them on a personal level and see if they're a good fit kind of with our organization. And so it's kind of one of those things where I felt God saying, yeah, this is what you love doing. Go do it. You don't have to do this. You could do a number of things. And I actually got some really good advice from Dr. Muehlhoff in that similar regard. He quoted St. Augustine, which the quote is, love God and do as you please, which is love God first and foremost. And he has given us gifts, passions, desires for a reason. And so follow those, provided they align with, you know, what he's expressed in his word. And he can use those things that he's naturally given you to direct you to where sometimes a good fit is. And so I think that's really encouraging, especially from hearing people say, oh, God told me to go here and I know this is where I'm supposed to be. That's not always the case. And sometimes it's more like that. So that's a little bit of how I got to where I'm at.
I can totally relate to that, where it's like, oh my goodness, I need a job right after you graduate. And you're kind of like, I don't know what to do. And so I know for me, when I was graduating, I got married pretty shortly after graduating and moved to a small town. My husband was a high school youth pastor. And for me, I was kind of like, all right, time to find a job. So I worked while I was at Biola as a student ambassador, and was kind of looking at my resume, like, what type of jobs am I even qualified for? And so from Biola, I had ended up doing some event coordinating, and I landed a full-time job as a development events coordinator, which is really in fundraising. And so I started planning all of these like galas and fundraising events, and very quickly realized I do not want to do this for a full-time job. I don't think this is a good fit for me, but I felt kind of stuck because it was like, well, I need to be making money and I don't want to leave after just like 6 months of doing this. So it kind of turned into this whole process of like, what do I want to do? And I wish somebody would have told me prior to graduating. More often than not, you will not land your dream job until several years down the line. And so I think that I really had to wrestle through that, where it was like I was hired. I think my first job as an event coordinator, I was hired for like $12 an hour. And that was a real gut punch where it was like, I got a degree and this is insane. But all that to say, I remember I reached out to Dr. Malloy because she was someone that I really respected, and we had developed a relationship. And she ended up sharing, have you considered pursuing your master's in communication, because it can open up doors for you. And so I ended up talking with her and Dr. Muehlhoff, and both of them ended up encouraging me, hey, I think you have what it takes. You should seriously consider it. So then I figured, well, I have some free time right now in the evenings, so I'll go ahead and get my master's and hopefully be able to land a better job. And so from getting my master's, I was able to get hired on as a director of communications at Western Seminary, which brought us here to Portland. And then from there, then I was able to get hired on in my current role now as the manager of marketing and communications for a nonprofit. And so I love my job now and realize, wow, I don't think I would have ever been able to get my job had I not had my master's, and had I not really struggled for a while to realize, hey, it takes time and it's okay to be in a job that you do not like, but just recognizing that it'll help you get to where you want to go.
I can go. So my path after graduating is kind of all over the place. I decided, I don't know, kind of similar to Landon and Becca, I had that moment of like, what am I going to do when I graduate? What am I going to do with my life? And an opportunity came up probably, I think I found out about it in March of my last semester. And it was to lead worship at Hume Lake for the summer. And I went to Hume Lake when I was 17, and that's actually where I got saved. And so it just seemed like a very full circle moment for me. And I really was impacted by the worship while I was there. And that was a huge part of me coming to the Lord. And so I was like, I feel like I need to do this. So I said yes. And so I graduated, and a week and a half later, I drove up to the Sequoia National Forest, and I lived in the forest for 3 months. And I kind of made pennies, and I did it for the experience. I didn't do it for the money. But yeah, that was really rewarding. Found out that I loved junior hires. Yeah, and so that was really helpful just to kind of try something out, see how I felt about it. But I also learned I'm not cut out for camp ministry at all. I always tell people because people will ask me what was it like working at Hume? And I'm loved it, never doing it again, because I just don't have it in me. But I found in that time that I had a huge passion for the local church. Every week you meet hundreds and hundreds of kids, and then they leave. And I just wanted to go home with all of them and watch them develop and watch them grow. And I just had this hunger for that. And so when I got home in, I think, September, I just started applying for ministry jobs anywhere and everywhere that I could. I'm pretty sure I didn't want to go out of state, but I was open to moving to San Diego or closer to LA or even Santa Barbara. And every single job I try to apply for, I wouldn't hear back, or I would get to the interview process and then I wouldn't hear back. And I would check back to all those places, and everywhere I applied, the people that they hired were all men in their 30s for pastoral positions or worship, youth, you name it. And I just had a breakdown one day, and I called Mike on, who works for spiritual development at Biola. He's the dean of chapel programs or something. And I just called him sobbing. And I was like, why didn't anyone tell me that because I'm a woman, I'll never get hired in ministry? How come no one told me that? I've wasted so much time. I wish I'd pursued something actually I can get hired in. And I was just so sad and disappointed, because I had a lot of experience, but people just weren't giving me a chance. And so I kind of gave up at that point on ministry. I was like, it's not going to happen for me. That's okay. So I started nannying, and I nannied for a year. I made good money doing it, but I don't like kids, so that was hard. And then I started to pursue music as a singer-songwriter, and I'm still doing that now on the side. That's kind of like my other job, but yeah. And then I got a job at a church through a friend and worked there for a year. And that was a really hard experience for me and would not go back. But then I started praying this past January 2020. And I was like, okay, Lord, I'm ready when you are. Just like take me anywhere. Like take me anywhere else but here, because it was really rough. And I, through another friend, met someone who was a female junior high pastor, and she was looking for a worship coordinator for all of the youth. And I met her. She introduced me to the high school lead named Trevor, who's now my boss. And yeah, I got offered the job basically 2 days before the lockdown happened. And so after that, they were like, we can't hire you. I'm sorry. We don't even know if like church is going to be a thing anymore. And I was like, totally, I get it. So I stayed with the church that I was working at because I hadn't told anyone that I had applied for another job. Worked there, did remote worship stuff for like 4 months. And then in July, I heard from Trevor, and he's like, hey, we still want you. Like, we're not looking at anybody else. Like, we really want to hire you. Will you work for us? And I was like, yes. And so I've been there since, and it's the best job I've ever had. And just like Becca was saying, it took time to get there. So much time, so many different things. Like I worked retail jobs. I did production assisting for like commercial shoots. I did like anything you can think of just to like pay off my loans. And I'm out of debt now. I lived at home. And so you can totally do it. It's just not going to look like what you think it's going to look like sometimes.
That is an awesome story. It doesn't always look like the way you think it's going to look is very much, that's a lot of what my experience was. So I graduated in 2013. And I also was in hey, I need a job because I need to, pay off loans and stuff. So I looked around and didn't really find anything, or the things that I applied for weren't coming up. So I basically was like, what do I have going for me? And I worked at Starbucks all the way through Biola. And December before I graduated, a regular customer pulled up to the window and said, hey, when you graduate, you should come look at my company. And like gave me your business card. And so I was like, this is it. This is the only thing that I have. So I looked up, saw that they had an office up in north of Seattle. So I applied for their entry-level position, which was a sales job. And I was doing some research on the guy who was I got called for an interview. And I was doing some research on the guy who was going to do the interview. And I saw on LinkedIn that he was a Biola alumni from like he graduated in 2004. So I was like, oh man, this is going to be awesome, because alumni, hello, that's how it all works, right? So I went up to the interview and it was not great. He basically said halfway through the conversation, he's like, when I graduated Biola, they were really good at teaching kids how to be missionaries, and they were terrible at teaching kids how to do anything business-wise. So if you don't get hired for this job, hint, hint, nudge, nudge, go get some real world experience and come back to me in a couple years. So that was not how I thought that conversation was going to go. But on the way home, I was like, I'm too competitive. I'm not going to let that like stop me. So I didn't start out being interested in sales. It's still not my favorite thing I've ever done, but I basically went home and looked for sales jobs and finally found my way to Xerox. So I did sales for Xerox for 2.5 years, my own, like selling directly. And then I moved to help do more sales operations for our enterprise sales team for another 1.5 years. And then I moved to I had done enough kind of project management type work that there was a moment where I I really needed to leave because there were just some personality clashes with my boss. And so I went to one of my coworkers, her husband was involved in a technology startup here in Seattle. So I went over there and I did, worked there as a project manager, installing their product all around the country, did a lot of traveling. And that was fun, but our product was software and hardware for restaurants. And so in March, when the whole restaurant industry shut down because of the virus, myself and half the company got laid off rather abruptly, which makes sense. So I was out looking for a job for a couple months, and it was a really good opportunity to kind of think through what did I really want to do, because up till then everything had just been reacting. I had been reacting to I need a job, reacting to not getting the job that I thought I wanted, reacting to, you know, switching positions, switching companies. And so I finally was in a position to look like proactively for the type of job that I wanted. And I almost moved actually back down to LA. I was in the process of interviewing for a job down in Southern California because I was like, I need something. And then one of my old coworkers at Xerox found out that I was looking for a job and connected me up with where I'm working now. And I started off again in project management, but actually 2 weeks ago learned that there was this other opportunity over on the sales side. And it just was one of those moments of like, you just know that this is the right thing to do, the right fit. And so I threw my hat in the ring, and now I'm doing the operations management that I'm currently doing. So a very roundabout way of getting here, but I want to echo what Rebekah said in terms of you're not necessarily going to know what your dream job is until you have a chance to try a couple different things. And I don't even know yet if I know what my dream job is. The point is I enjoy what I'm doing. It's fun. I work with great people. And I think that's just the blessing and curse. The blessing of communications is you can do anything. The curse of communications is you can do anything, which means that you don't know, like, it's not like you're a nursing student, no offense to nursing students, who graduate and like, you are going to do one thing. That, you know, looking back, I think I would have probably worried less if I had somebody say like, just start somewhere and start learning what you like and what you don't like, and let it go naturally, because God will open the doors when it's time to walk through them, and he'll shut the doors when it's time to not walk through them. So yeah.
Thank you so much. That was really good insight, because I remember Dr. Malloy mentioned how, I'm not sure if you guys also read the artifact of the colloquialism of getting a real job, or when the term like, oh, what is your dream job? It's more thinking about the future rather than putting and just focusing on the now and what you're currently doing. And that is just as important as the future as well. And well, a certain student also asked is, what advice would you give in regards to networking?
I would say talk to everyone everywhere. Like, if you're a comm major, you are good at talking to people, you like people, and that is a huge strength. Like, a lot of people don't just like initiate, I would say. That's just not natural for everyone. And that's something I learned when I graduated college, is like, wow, people don't really initiate interactions very much. And like, because I do that, I already have a leg up on a lot of people. And so, so that's probably the first thing is like, I got both of the jobs that I had, the last 2 jobs, including the one I have now, because I like asked a question. I was like, are you guys hiring? Or I would say like, oh, are you looking for someone? Or whatever, you know? And so I'd say number one, just like talk to people everywhere you go. If there's someone where they have a job and you want that job, talk to them. Like, email them and say like, hey, can I sit down with you? Can we get lunch? Like, even if you don't know them, just like go for it. And second, I would say, and this is something I've had to learn as an artist and a musician, is like, ask people for help, ask people for favors, because like most of the time people want to help you. Like if people are your friends or their family or, an old professor or someone that's really talented at something, like just in anything in life, you can't do everything yourself. Like you have to outsource. And a lot of times, like I can't pay people to help me, but like I can get them a gift card, or I can treat them to dinner, or I can put their name in the credits in a music video. Like there's a lot. And a lot of times people just like want to be part of something. And especially if people have a day job, but like their passion is editing video or photography or design, like you can ask those people like, hey, would you be willing to like design a logo for my brand? And they're like, oh my gosh, yeah, I'd love to. And it like doesn't hurt to ask. People can always say no. I used to feel like so afraid of like burdening people or bothering them, or if I'd say like, oh no, they're gonna think I'm taking advantage of them and they'll never want to see me again, whatever. It's like, just do it, because 9 out of 10 times people will say yes, and then you have something that you couldn't have done by yourself. And that's only gonna help you.
I think that's great. I would add on 2 things that come to mind. First one would be, at least in the jobs that I've held, oftentimes when you're at the bottom of the totem pole, there's several opportunities where it's like, hey, we need somebody on our team to work this tabling event. Or, hey, we have these extra tickets to attend this fundraising dinner. And we need someone to go. Like you can bring a friend with you if you want, or fill in the blank. Hey, we're like part of this business alliance, and we need to send somebody to go to the breakfast and be able to share our mission statement and kind of some of the highlights of what we've been doing recently. So those type of things, I would say always commit to and say, yeah, I'm down, I'll do it. Because that's where you're able to really start networking. Because I think for me, I was like, what even is networking? Like, do I just walk up to some random person? I tend to be more introverted. And so like, I so respect that about you, Sophia, because I'm like, I would never just in a coffee shop be like, hey, tell me, what do you do for a living? So for me, these events were amazing because I would be seated at a table and somebody sitting next to me. It was a lot more comfortable for me to engage in conversation. Like, oh, I see that you work for this company. Tell me more about what you do. And then secondly, I would say to stand out, because typically at networking events, you're passing a lot of business cards between each other. Always make sure you have business cards on you. I've been in embarrassing situations where I'm like, shoot, I did not bring a business card. So, but anyways, when you're exchanging business cards, if you met somebody that you really thought you had a good interaction with, that's when it really helps to send them an email afterward and just say, hey, it was great getting to meet you. I really enjoyed our conversation. Just wanted to make sure that you had my email. And sometimes you never know where those can lead, and it can open up other opportunities for you. And yeah, so those are probably the top 2 things that come to mind.
That's good. That's really good. At this stage, I would say for me, one thing that was big was informational interviews, which are just, if you have a contact. And side note, I mean, use your professors. I mean, not in a weird way, but like use the contacts that they have, because they probably know someone who either does something that you're interested in or know someone who does, the law of removal or whatever. So I remember I had gotten close with a professor who knew someone who was interested in what I was doing. So he set us up a time to get lunch. And I wasn't asking for a job. I was just asking for, tell me about what you do. And it's so helpful to just learn about what a day-to-day job looks like. And that helps. Yeah, I want to pursue something like this or not. And then kind of to your point, Becca, of just, following up after, sending thank you notes is huge, just to kind of go the extra mile. Something handwritten just shows the time that you put in. That's one big thing. The other thing I would say is, don't be afraid of rejection. It's hard. And I've gotten some no's, and they're not fun when you want a job and they say no, or even when you only kind of want a job, the no still kind of, oh, that's, that stings a little. But one quick story I'll say is, so I had to apply for a kind of a preview weekend, which if you're accepted to that, then you essentially get the position that you want. And so I applied and I got rejected. And so I was super bummed because I really wanted this position. And so I followed up with the recruiter and said, hey, just out of curiosity, are there things I could do to, you know, make myself a stronger applicant, or just kind of following up about what what it was. And he got back to me and said, yeah, you know, it might've just been this or this. And I actually didn't have a part in this decision. So I'm going to refer you to someone else who might. And then I was able to apply through someone else, and I got the position that I have now. And so it's a cool thing where if you really want something, go after it, pursue it. And with a heart of, I mean, willingness to learn, open-handedness, not out of, why didn't I get it? Not complaining, but an understanding that the reality is, as a new grad, and even as someone in their first year, like at the bottom of the totem pole, so to speak. And so an openness to say, you know, like, how can I grow is huge. And I think if you show that, that's a big plus for employers.
Yeah, I would echo all of that. And I mean, to add on to a couple of those things, so like what Rebekah said, like always being the person who says yes to the things that need to be done. And that requires not just the willingness to say yes, but you have to be attentive to that. You have to be looking around. I would say that networking as a term, as a concept, gets thrown around as this thing that if you do it right, it's just, you're going to magically land a job. You're going to have, like, the doors are all going to open, and, you know, angels will be singing in the background as you walk into your rightful place, you know, whatever. Like not anything like that whatsoever. It's networking as a tool. Networking is simply the concept of building relationships. And if you've ever helped a friend out with homework, or, you know, driven them to and from the airport, or you've ever, like, gone and had office hours with a professor, all that is networking. All you're doing is but to do that, you have to be attentive. You have to be actually looking around to who needs what. So I guess the added spin I would put on there that I've learned is, in any organization, or, you know, whatever it is, whatever your field is, there's going to be a number of people, there's going to be a large number of people who are just there, who are along for the ride, whether that's in your business, whether that's in your field, right? And then there are a couple of people in any organization that are the ones who are actually making it happen. They're the ones who are, you know, they're consistently on time or early every day. They probably come in before everyone else, and they probably either leave early because they're really organized, or they leave after everyone else. And the majority of, it's the 80-20 rule, right? It's 80% of the results are generated by 20% of the people. So the added spin I would put on that is, in your organization or in your industry, look for the people that you're close enough proximity to, who are the ones who are making things happen. Decision makers, leaders, department heads, you know, leaders of organizations, industry organizations, leaders of nonprofits, the people whose, like, it's their organization, or it's their reputation on the line, because they didn't just get there by accident. And those are the people that you want to make extra attention to help, right? Because if you help them, that actually matters. Like, if you add value to their life, like, that's going to matter, because they're usually always too busy to get done everything that they want to get done. And so those are the people that you want to, like, if you have to choose, right, target the people who are going to be able to turn around and really recognize the value. Because if you help out somebody who doesn't need help, or isn't really interested in doing a good job, maybe you'll make a friend, but it's, speaking specifically in terms of career advancement, that's not going to help you out. So that would be the main, I think that's the main thing that I've learned about networking. The other thing is, I mean, I'm sure it'll be brought up ad nauseum between now and whenever anyone graduates, but yes, get on LinkedIn. LinkedIn is way overrated in the sense that it seems like you can just ask people for a job, or go on and apply for a job. Not at all. The value of LinkedIn is, you want to connect with every single person that you know, and then anyone you think you might know, and anyone they might know. Because what LinkedIn allows you to do is, if you know somebody, so say I know Landon, and I want to talk to somebody that Landon's connected to, or I want to talk to somebody high up inside of Landon's organization. If I'm not connected to Landon, I have no visibility into who else works at his organization or what they do, right? But if I am even a secondary connection to Landon, now I get to see a lot more information about everyone else that Landon is connected to. And so any organization that you're in, your church, your friends' parents, connect with them on LinkedIn, not because you're going to ask them for a job, but because it allows you to understand who's doing what where. You can, if you want a certain job, you can go look at somebody who has that job and look at their work history. How did they work their way up to that position? And so don't let go of the expectation that LinkedIn is going to produce something, some magical result for you. View it as a research tool, because that's ultimately how, unless you're a recruiter whose job it is to go find people, that's the main value that you're going to get out of LinkedIn.
Yeah. And just to add on, like, something that I wish I knew earlier post-grad is, like, weddings are amazing for networking. Like, people's parents, people's cousins, people's friends, like, there's just a hodgepodge of people at weddings, and you're going to go to a lot of them if you go to Biola. Like, I think I went to like
They're all
8
in a good mood.
the first year after I graduated, 8, and they were all people my age. And so, like, make the most of weddings.
And everybody's in a good mood. The other thing I thought I wanted to throw in there, which is actually to kind of disagree with what Becca said in terms of networking events. Be careful of networking events in terms of again, just like LinkedIn, they're a tool. The majority of people who are going to networking events are going there for the same reason you're going there, which is to try and find a better job, which means that they don't currently have the type of job that they want, which means that chances are that's not going to really help you. And it's not really an option to make a ton of relationships unless you really, make that a commitment. So don't not go to networking events is what I'm trying to say, but also don't be careful to set your expectations accordingly, because you can spend a lot of money, you can spend a lot of time talking to people who are doing the exact same thing you're doing, which means that there's nobody there who's going to pull you up, so to speak, if that's the goal that you're going for. I think that for maybe in the music industry, networking events are probably much better than in the technology industry. In most corporate, if corporate is somebody's interest, the statistic is something like only 30% of jobs are ever posted online. 60% are actually handed back and forth by who you know, right? I got a job. Every single job that I've gotten, it's because of who I knew. I have never once, except for Starbucks, walked in the door and just applied. I knew somebody at Xerox who helped me get a job at my startup company, and somebody else at Xerox helped me get a job at my current company. And those positions, like my current job, I never saw the job description before I got the job. I didn't see a job description. I barely interviewed, because that's how most companies work. If they need somebody for a job, they say, "Hey, everybody, who do you know? Do you know anybody who's good, who's looking for a job?" Because that allows them to bypass all of the posting it on the internet and going through rounds of interviews and all that stuff. So I guess that's just another plug for networking is very important. And it's just, even if you don't see the fruits of it right away, keep talking to people, if you see somebody who you haven't seen for a while, go talk to them, say hi, see what they're up to, right? And try to add value, right? See where you can make their life better, because that's where they're actually going to remember you. I think it's just a human principle, right? If somebody does something nice for you, chances are you're going to want to turn around and do something nice for them. So yeah, I will stop monologuing.
Scott, I think that's totally great what you put in about networking events. I just want to make sure I clarify too, in case anybody misunderstood me. I wasn't talking about networking events where I personally was paying money to attend. Every single one of these were through my job, and it was more so like, hey, this is part of the job, but we just need somebody from our organization to go and represent us. So those type of things, anything you can weave into your current role is amazing, because you're also getting paid for it too. So you don't have to feel bad about it when you're meeting people, and you never know what could end up opening up. But absolutely what Scott was saying, I'd be very leery of paying to attend networking events, because more often than not, you'll end up finding a lot of MLM people there. And you're kind of like, wait a second, I didn't want to have to pay $100 to have to like hear about Arbonne. So, so yeah, those are just some good tips.
Unless you're in real estate or life or car insurance and people are your customers, then go to all the networking events because it's all customers.
True.
The other thing is go to trade shows. If you're involved in an organization where you can go to a trade show of some type, not probably possible during COVID, but basically it's where everybody in your industry comes together and puts up a booth and showcases what they do, which is a great way, because everybody who goes to trade shows goes to a lot of trade shows, which means that there's a lot of people who the only interesting conversation that they're going to have that week outside of the memorized script that they've given 1,000 times is to meet you. So it's another great, trade shows are probably a even better networking event in that regard.
Well, that is a lot of information, and I'm so glad to hear all that. I think like networking is not really, at least for me personally, has not really been spoken about or go on more in depth about specifically. Well, our final question is actually from Professor Hawley, and she asks, what is one thing you wish you would have done while you were in college?
So I feel like I have kind of a unique experience with this question, because I don't feel like I missed out on anything at Biola. Like everything I had an interest in or a desire to try, I kind of just went for it. Yeah, I just kind of, like any professor that I connected to, I would like always reach out and like start a relationship with them, do office hours, like Dr. Lundy, Dr. Malloy, just a lot of professors that I like enjoyed their class. I would, even professors that I didn't really enjoy their class, like it's just so smart to do that. And yeah, so I kind of made a habit of doing that with any professor that I just really appreciated a little bit more. And yeah, that has been awesome and such a resource. Like you keep those relationships after you graduate too. So yeah, I don't really have anything that I feel like I wish I had done. If anything, just get more office hours with the same people.
I'm going to answer in two ways. One, because Professor Hawley is the one asking the question, I'm going to say, I wish I would have worked harder on the final group presentation for common diversity. She'll know what that means. Generally speaking, I would say, I've thought a lot about this because I also really liked my Biola experience. I had a lot of fun. I got to do a lot of things, but as a result, I was always super busy. So I've sometimes wondered, like, what would I have done if I maybe was less busy? Would I have done more like intramural events or like gone to more, I don't know. I don't think I ever made it to the Getty Museum once the entire time I was there. So I definitely would have gone to the beach more just because it's the beach. But I think looking back, if I could go back and tell, freshman me something, it would be like from the very beginning, start thinking about what types of work you might want to do and start talking to people, start researching, start experimenting. Just because when you do graduate, like I said, COMM is great because you can do anything. It's also not great because you can do anything. And so start that thinking process. It's really common to start, that conversation in your senior year, because that's when people start asking you at home, what are you going to do when you graduate? Which is the worst question ever. But starting that as soon as possible on your breaks, summer, winter, right? Like just start thinking about it. And I don't just mean like, what do you want to do as an entry level job, but like, what type of industry do you want to work in? What type of role do you want to have? Because chances are from there, you can take that and you kind of reverse engineer, okay, I'm going to get an entry level job in a marketing firm because I want to work with branding and storytelling. So I'm going to get an entry level job in a marketing firm, maybe even before I graduate, because I know that I'm going to be working my way up. So I know where I'm going to start instead of having to kind of wait 6 to 12 months, maybe 2 or 3 years to realize that the dream job concept doesn't just happen.
I'm trying to think. I agree with both like what Sophia and Scott are saying. I loved Biola. And so it's really hard for me to think back on like, oh, what do I wish I would have done? But the main thing that comes to mind is I didn't really think about building my resume or my CV while I was in college because it was like, I'm so busy right now working on all of my other projects and such. But I do remember several of my professors had recommended, hey, if there's a project that you're really proud of that you've done very well on, I would recommend like seeing how you could weave that into your resume or CV. And even if it's like pulling apart different skills that you've learned from the classes that you've taken, those you can absolutely add to your resume. And so it wasn't until after I graduated that piece of advice kind of like floated to the top of my brain. And I was like, that's right. So then I was trying to, of course, go back through my assignments and be like, man, this would have been so much easier had I done it when I was in the middle of it. So that's the main thing that comes to mind. And then second, I would just say, I wish I wasn't so concerned about like, what kind of job am I going to land? And like, gosh, I feel like I'm so behind because so many of my other friends, it was like I lived with a whole bunch of nursing majors. And so for them, they're like, I know exactly what my job is going to be. And I envied that because I was like, I have no idea what my job's going to be. And I'm not sure if everybody listening is a part of Lambda Pi Eta. But if they're not, I had actually applied for it at Biola and I got rejected. And I was devastated because I was like, what in the world? Like I had the GPA for it. And on paper, I thought I should have absolutely gotten accepted and I didn't. And I just like instantly was like, well, this is awful. I'm not capable. I'm not qualified. And I didn't become a Lambda Pi Eta member until grad school. And so that was a really like redeeming moment where it was like, okay, yet again, dealing with rejection and just being willing to kind of like put yourself out there and try things while in college, knowing, hey, it's all a learning process and it'll hopefully help you get to where you want to go.
Yeah, that's great. That's really cool. I would also say, I'll answer this 2 ways as well. From a practical standpoint, I probably would have done more internships. I didn't do any because I think they're required now, so you probably have to do them anyways. But I think our year was either the last or second to last year, they weren't required. And so that was something I wish I'd done. But then from more of like a fun standpoint, I think it's just kind of picking and choosing what's important to you. If that's friendships, invest in those friendships because it's hard to maintain friendships outside of college, at least when you're not in the same state. But the people that you're intentional with and you build that depth with, it will be easier to do so. If it's making memories, make memories. Do mock rock, even though it's going to be 3 weeks of no sleep. You look back and you remember it fondly. Do intramurals, do clubs. If you're, I mean, it's a unique time, and so it's a great time to try things. And so I would say, in more of a fun regard, do that, as well as just balance. I mean, you can't do it all, and obviously doing what's healthy. And making time for, intentional growth with the Lord as well. Don't let that become a non-habit. But I would, from a fun aspect that, and then from a practical standpoint, do internships, do all these things that, people are here talking about. Because college is the time to prep for career, but also a time to have fun. So find that balance.
Well, thank you guys so much for all your answers to all our questions. And Rebekah, I have no idea why that was. Why. I have no. I veto that as current president.
Thank you. It's okay. It was honestly a really good learning experience. So, but thank you. I appreciate that.
Wonderful. Well, as we are closing down, if you guys have any last closing remarks you would like to add, or something that you would want current Biola COMM students to know, now is your window of opportunity.
I would probably just kind of piggyback off what a lot of others have shared already, but really lean into the relationships that you've built with your professors. I kid you not, the amount of times that I have reached out to several Biola faculty members, just asking for their advice on something, or even letters of recommendation, those are huge. And so really try to build those relationships while you're at Biola. And then feel free to continue them on. I know I love any chance I get when I can connect with people from Biola. So I would just encourage you to really find those people that you can really respect and see, I don't know, hey, what can I learn from you? And be able to reach out to them.
I'd say push yourself academically. COMM is very much a get out what you put in kind of major. And there are things where I'm like, dang, I wish I would have read that book and not skimmed it for the assignment, because now my rental's up and I don't have it. But obviously, again, balance, you can't do it all. So work smarter, not harder. But I mean, taking Mo's rhetorical theories was probably one of the best things for me, because I mean, I don't know if you guys have had him, but he's tough, but he is good tough. And I needed that. And that grew me so much as a student. And so I would say, put yourself in situations, you know, don't always settle for the grade that you can get, and push yourself to do the best that you can. Because again, not that the grade itself matters, but develop that work ethic and become a learner, because that's really the bigger picture rather than the grade you get, your GPA. If you're someone who learns and is a lifelong learner, I think that's going to behoove you very much.
I have a couple of thoughts. I was just recently having a conversation with somebody who asked me, like, why is communications a valuable degree to have? Because we live in such a specialized world. And I think one of the answers to that, I'm sure there's a lot of answers to that question, but one of the answers to that question is, you might start in a entry-level position, let's say, wherever that is, retail, help desk, you know, whatever it is that you might want to do. And you might see your friends, maybe, like if you know somebody who's a nurse, or you know somebody who's works in engineering or software or something, like starting at a quote unquote higher level. What communications gives you the ability to do is essentially read the room better than anyone else. And what I mean by that is, when you're in a entry level position, you're going to be surrounded by people who are in your same position. You're going to be surrounded by people who are in different levels of hierarchy above you. Communication gives you the ability, from a listening standpoint, to really understand who has power, who has influence, who really makes the decisions, who do you not want to get on the bad side of, who do you want to get on the good side of, and so on and so forth. And just like any organization of people, a classroom, a church, a very large family, right? Like, who you know and who you have a good relationship with matters. And so the value in communications is, yes, you can do a lot of things, but once you get started, chances are you are going to be able to grow within that organization or industry or job function or whatever it is at a far faster rate than a lot of other people, precisely because you have training on how to listen and how to understand small group dynamics and how to understand large group dynamics, how to write an email without a typo, how to write an email that sounds professional. versus not professional. I'm in a position right now where I manage a number of people, and as we speak, you know, the last month or two, I'm coaching one of my employees on how to take contractions out of her emails that she's writing. Don't use contractions in professional business communication. It's not like that's one of those things that, like, you probably would learn that if you ever send an email to Dr. Malloy or Professor Colley or something like that. But not everybody learns that. And it's like, there's so many examples where I've interviewed people or reviewed resumes where, like, the way that they communicate, I can tell when they're listening to me versus when they think that they know what I'm talking about and they're answering the question they think I'm asking. That matters. That absolutely will make the difference between two equally qualified candidates, because that first impression, really, the majority of an interview, if somebody gives you an interview, it means that they've already looked at your resume or they've received a recommendation. They have a general sense that you probably can do the job. The reason that most people interview is to see, do I like this person? Can I see myself working with this person? An interview is rarely about, can you actually do the job? It's, how are you actually going to communicate with me when I ask you a hard question? Are you going to take the time to listen to my question and then answer my question and not make that assumption? So again, communications is tough because there's just so many different things that you can do with it, but it's such a gift and it's such a powerful skill, because every piece of the work that you're going to do is communications related. And the better that you can communicate, there is probably the difference of 5 figures, tens of thousands of dollars difference in pay between a software engineer who can communicate and a software engineer who cannot. That's how that's how the inner workings of most organizations work, is the people who are able to effectively communicate and listen are the ones who are people like to work with, and the ones that are given the opportunity to move up, if only because they're paying attention and they're looking around and they're aware of what's happening. And so I love communications for that reason. And I want to really encourage those who are coming into the position of maybe being in a, like, not knowing, not having that level of certainty, the nurse problem, let's call it, the lack of nursing degree that gives you a very clear next step. Like, yes, you will be in the doldrums maybe longer than somebody who has a very clear and specific education. You're probably going to have a lot more fun the way you work up, because you are not limited by that, right? So yes, somebody who has a nursing degree will know what their next step is, but they're only ever going to have one next step. You, as a communication studies major, wherever your next step starts, you get to have any number of next steps that you want after that. And every job that you have, you're only ever going to learn more, because your education, like Landon said, you're learning how to learn. As a communication studies major, more than anything, you're learning how to learn from other people and about other people. And that's why communication studies is always, like, communication, strong written and oral communication is always listed as one of the top skills that managers are hiring for. Yes, you probably have to have some other kind of specialization for most jobs, but it's because they want to talk to somebody who's actually going to listen to them and do what they say, because it takes a lot longer for them. Like, one of the scenarios that I run into a lot is somebody gets hired, and because they don't know how to communicate, their manager has to do their job for them because they're not listening to what's being assigned. And that, as a manager, why would I hire somebody if I'm just going to end up doing the job for them anyway? And so it's really hard to describe how important it is, because you're never actually you can't ever see it. You just kind of experience it, and you realize that people are missing things that you're not missing. And people are passing on opportunities that you're not passing on, because you just have that that attention, that attentiveness, and that skill set to really interpret what's happening and really kind of unpack what the problems are, why people can't get along, why people can't communicate. And there's a huge amount of value that you can add to any organization that you work with that skill set.
Thank you guys so much. All your guys' insight has been so beneficial. I know that they're not, including myself, communications, you're going into confusion and uncertainty, not knowing what to do. And I know that there are students out there who are wondering, what can I do with a COMM degree? And I thank you guys so much for being here and just for allowing those questions to be answered, regardless if that is just a small opening of what's a possibility of COMM. It's just knowing that those possibilities are out there. And as Scott said, those steps, there's so many steps that can be taken place with COMM. And once again, I just really appreciate you guys coming in here and speaking about your experiences and what you've learned and what you are continuing to learn. And I just want to say thank you all for coming.